And that's what this evening's program is, and it's going to be primarily Eric and Ann showing you all the birds of Panama. I'm going to be stuck with just the bugs. So we can have a slide up here. Anyway, we were down there with Kathy and Charlie were down with Eric and Ann and I, and we spent about 10 days traveling around Panama, primarily in the western part of the country. And while we were all photographing birds, I was also photographing some of the little stuff that was around too. And some of it I found quite interesting. Many of you know that I've been doing butterflies for a long time, but I also like little spiders and little crawling things. So if we can get the slide here.
No, it's, I can do it. I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know where they are.
And as a result, I did a book on the wildlife of Panama and on our trip. Many of you, I think, have received the PDF version of that. If you have not, get your email to me or to Ann.
Shall we put it on the
one of us.
website?
It can go on the website, sure.
Okay, I'll make a note of that.
But check that, because you're certainly welcome to look at the contents of the book. This one is Charlie and Kathy's copy.
You have to find them for it.
So as soon as we get a look at some of the bugs here. There's nothing here to show.
Yeah.
I like it. That makes it kind of easy.
What's on here?
No, that's not. I don't know. Things on.
Oh, could it be on Dino still?
Yeah.
There we go.
Anyway, as many of you know, there's a great variety of wildlife in Panama. We were primarily interested in the western part of the country, but it turned out we had to do some detours and spend a little more time on the continental ridge than we had expected. But it turned out to be very beneficial, at least for the small creatures. So here's some of the, and I had expected to see a lot of butterflies, and I wanted to see a lot of beetles in particular. Well, we saw a lot of butterflies. Most of them were moving like this and not very cooperative. So I do have some photographs of butterflies, but it turned out that some of the other orders were much more amenable to a camera than the butterflies and the beetles, particularly than the beetles. So we have a beetle here. Can we go back? Let's stay on the first one for a moment or two. Some of you may recognize this fly. If you have a garden in your yard, you have one that's very similar to that, same genus, but it's a genus that's found virtually everywhere. This is a slightly different species, even though it looks like it, but they do like asters. In the upper right is one of the bugs, and it turned out this is a true bug. This actually is a bug, as opposed to a bug with a Z on the end of it. And they were very cooperative, and several different families within that order showed up. This one is very familiar to most of you, not that particular species, but that shape is very characteristic of one of the very common families of the true bugs, Hemiptera. And then the lower left is one of the grasshoppers, and grasshoppers turned out to be abundant as well. Many different species, though it was interesting that I found them quite different from the ones that we usually have. This one, as you can see, is rather a sharp angle here on the head. And these are called slant-faced grasshoppers. And in Panama, they were abundant. The ones that we have here have heads that are rather squared off. Most of them are rather drab that gray bird grasshopper quite large, whereas the grasshoppers in Panama tended to be quite a bit smaller than the ones that we have here, more like the bandwing grasshoppers and smaller. In fact, there were a couple of them that were only about 3 millimeters long, and not as nymphs either, but as adults. If we can go to the next slide. I've identified some of the actual species of these, but not of all of them. Here we have a range of things. We have a spider in the middle, and this one is related to the ones that come in on banana boats. So some of them have very large leg spans. I almost said wingspan, but they fly in on the banana boat, so that's close enough. In the lower left is one of the many Newman wasps that are there. They tend to be quite small, and this doesn't look as small as it actually is in practice. It's maybe 1/4 of an inch long. In the lower right is a beetle. Finally, I saw a beetle, one of relatively few that we had. This is a tiger beetle, and the tiger beetles are hunters. They run on the ground and their jaws are massive, and they trap things. We do have tiger beetles here, but none that are anywhere near as fascinating as this combination of colors. Ours tend to be fairly uniformly gray or rusty color with some orangish squiggles on the elytra. Here you have very bright elytra. The elytra are the forewings of the beetles. So beetles have hard forewings. They fly, if they fly at all, using the hind wings, and the forewings will come up, and it makes them very awkward flyers. As if you notice the green fig beetle that runs around here, they run into you and they're big enough that you feel them when they hit. In the upper right is probably the oddest bug I've ever seen. It was not the intended target of that photograph. I was photographing the plant, which is has this bulbous flower head, and the flowers have pretty much gone to seed. And on the other side, when I actually got to look at the photograph on the screen, was this thing. And if you look at it, it's a true bug. You can tell it's a hemiptera because it has that half wing. There's that little triangle there. But look at the angle of the head. You think of the heads of insects as just attached straight forward. This one is bent down, and there's no series of things that allow movement of that head. It's just the head is always that way, and I'd never seen anything quite like that. I think I've identified it to the species. It was. I don't believe there's any other record in Panama, but there are a couple in Costa Rica of this particular species. We're going to go to the next slide here. And then we get to some butterflies and moths. And those were, when they stopped, were quite spectacular. So the one in the upper left is actually a Panamanian species. It's named Panamensis, and is the moth. We have things that are not very closely related to that. In the upper right is Hermes satyr. This was the most easily photographed butterfly that I saw present in Panama. They were quite common. They're small, but unfortunately, for a common one, they really ought to be not quite as drab as that, I think. And then in the lower right, you have a clear-winged moth. There are clear-winged butterflies and clear-winged moths. There were two that were very similar, whether it's male and female, whether two different species, I don't know yet. Not all of these are so easy to identify. I do have some reference material, but it's a gorgeous animal. It's just quite amazing to me.
Were the two opposite each other? Were they on the same plant? Looks like the same. plant.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a quite an incredible head of flowers that had
it
way
was-
more bugs on it
It
than
was
that.
wonderful.
Yeah, it was really neat.
It was, we should have just put a cage around it and brought it back with it. Left it here to March.
Yeah, I'd
And then-
try and get that through customs.
Right,
And then this butterfly in the lower left is actually quite small. That's one that really ought to be that big, and it's more like, well, it's, you know, probably about an inch. Well, that's quite small. And next. And then there are the long wings. And these are the butterflies that are quite spectacular. Most of them feed on the heliconians. The heliconian, the genus Heliconia and the family Heliconia. The name, what would it be? Anyway, the family that has the heliconians in it. There are a lot of toxic materials. It's much like milkweed that the monarchs feed on. So there are a lot of butterflies that use it, and many of them are mimics of one another. So some are poisonous, some are not, but they look in a variety of different ways. Many of them are like this one in the lower left. You have that pattern of black and yellow and orange markings, quite variable from one species to another, but they're similar enough that they reinforce the message to potential predators: don't eat things. And there's a glossy wing, this Ithomia species, there are quite a few species in that genus, and they do have clear wings. This is a butterfly, and they are just exquisite animals, seems to me. But this whole group seems to have very long wings compared to most of the butterflies that we see. And two others, there's a Juno and the cream spotted tiger wings, and a number of them are called tiger wings because of the kinds of markings that they have. So these are some of the spectacular things that are in there. And you'll find, if you take a look at the PDF of this book of Panama, you'll find many of them within that book and a much wider range of comparison. So I've got to take off because I have to be downtown in 45 minutes. But
fortunately, the traffic wasn't too bad getting down here.
yeah,
So
I think I will survive. We'll find out.
enjoy. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jess.
I think I'll just talk.
Is that a family?
Okay.
And,
Yeah, a minute.
okay, now can you go to the other one?
Yeah, got it.
And
Yeah.
they won't hear you online without
Yeah,
the
they
mic.
have that.
Oh, okay, that's right. Forgot about that.
Forgot about them.
And I'm very, very insistent that we have hybrid meetings. Yeah. A combination of Zoom.
So follow.
Thank you, Eric.
Do the-
A combination, a hybrid meeting, a combination of Zoom and in person. And I'm really pleased to see you in person folks here. So I'm gonna continue on. We usually introduce a little bit differently, but tonight's been weird. Can you fast or forward one? Jasmine, please. By the way, our technical committee here is Jasmine
Hey.
and Julian.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is a local parrot or not.
No.
I do.
What is it?
Well, it's South Coast Container Garden. It's yellow chevron turkey.
Is it a native here or is it
No.
an
No.
import?
But they're here now.
They're quite comfortable.
Okay. So some of you are finding out, I don't know my bird. I know a few, but that's it. Okay, to the next slide, please. All right, so we are going through This will help you all get to know more birds than you ever thought you would have. This is the little known and seldom seen birds of North America. And this is my favorite one, the long-range target duck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, check that out. And according to this book, it's one of the few examples of inverse evolution. The more distinct the markings are in the bird, the more likely it's to die. The landed grace of this particular species of duck normally flew only about 20 feet above ground. Unfortunately, the species has been exterminating, leaving only the Midwestern race, which flies at 100 feet. His warning call is a frantic duck, duck, duck. So observation hits, if you find yourself in the Midwest where there's water, it's pretty easy to identify when they're flying, but you have to be pretty low down to see them. And the best chance of getting a good look at the long-range target duck is a long shot. I've had this book for many years and found it so ridiculous. I did a lot of taxonomy in my professional years. And so this stuff cracks me up, especially the evolutionary stuff. So I've yet to see a long-range target duck, but I keep looking. So what we're gonna do is Ann and Eric, and you know Jess, all went to Panama. Who else was with your trip?
Charlie and Kathy.
We tell us,
Oh, okay, great. Anybody else?
that was it.
Glad to have you all aboard.
It's a pretty comfortable trip.
You can tell us, the dingo, all about it.
I'm gonna do that very thing.
Okay.
Just that.
I'm gonna find a place to sit and be out of the way. Do you want to sit here, Julian?
Gotta
It's being pulled up. Give me one second.
I'm just glad.
So are your photos in PowerPoint again?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get out of this PowerPoint then.
It's not gonna let me right now because it's loading it up.
Oh,
Gonna take
okay.
a
I
second.
see, we're getting there, the white bars.
Yeah, there we go.
Conclusion.
Beautiful.
That the peak time for all this stuff is about 10 years behind us. Now they keep adding on stuff that makes it more complicated and then work as well.
And that'll continue to happen, I'm sure. Alrighty, so, a while back, Jan, asked us to do presentations about some of the trips that we've done. Then we came up with the idea of calling it our road trips. So we're on the road. So the last presentation we did was Ecuador and the Galapagos. So next slide. So today we're going to add. I'm going to add. Panama. And I asked Jess to do a little short presentation because his pictures are so spectacular. He's an artist with his camera. I'm more of I had a fun trip, but I want to share it with you kind of a person. So my pictures won't be quite as spectacular. And I borrowed a bunch from Charlie as well. When I looked at our pictures, if he had tinkered with his and got the lighting right, and I hadn't done that yet, I borrowed. So, but I will give him credit as well. So the next slide, please. So we're on the road to Panama to 2023 because I went in 2019. Eric and I went on Jess's first trip down there, and I have every intention to go back again. So they're going to be dated. So Eric and I and Kathy and Charlie and Jess got to visit a different part of Panama than we visited before. Next slide.
Ann,
So here's Panama.
Ann, on account of the camera placement, would you
Don't we
be
say-
able to present from that side? Thank you.
When we were in Panama in 2019, we were mostly Panama City, up around this area, up into the hills there, and then we went down towards, but not very close to Colombia. So this trip, the plan was that we were going, ooh, look at that. The plan was that we were coming down here to Santiago, and then we we're gonna go up to David, we we're gonna go up to Boquete, and then we were gonna go to Boca State del Toro, which was our primary goal bird-wise for this trip. Because our wonderful friend Guido Berguido has set up a hawk watching program in Bocas. And they had seen as many as 100,000 hawks migrating. And I wanted to see 100,000 hawks migrating.
In one day.
In one day, that says in one day, yeah. And so that was our goal.
Anne, would you like a pointer for your?
I love it. Thank you.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Did you suffer from being near the Gulf of those mosquitoes?
I think, I'm not even sure I saw one mosquito.
What?
It was raining a lot. It would have been hard to fly around if you're a mosquito. No, we didn't,
Well, that one place, Canada.
oh, yeah, I take it back, when we went to swampy areas down here. Mosquito City, but it was just one morning, so. And we all got in the bus that we take off, and Jacob, our guide, said, did you all bring your insect repellent? It's in our suitcase, and so we had to stop and buy insect repellent so we could go visit the mosquitoes, but we managed. Okay, next slide. So arriving at the international airport, I was disappointed to find that, next slide. Pumpkin spice. We're seated. It's like, oh, God, I know. Okay, anyway, we survived. So our first stop was at the Summit Rainforest and Golf Resort. And this is a wonderful, it's a very nice hotel, but the neat thing about it for us is that it had very mixed habitat. It had true Panamanian jungle, and it also had a golf course. So you had a lot of different habitats just right around the hotel. So we went a couple days early with the intent of getting a little relaxation, a little birding in before things started happening. So, okay. And they got some neat stuff. There's some beautiful murals in that. I really like this bench with the preset seating arrangements there. Okay. And we had cocoa wood creeper next. And he got a bug, and he proceeded to dispose of it until there was nothing but the wishbone. Okay, and another, this is a great mural too. This is near the dining room, okay? Southern lapwings playing through on the golf course.
Yeah.
Next. Howler monkeys serenading us from the trees. If you've never heard of howler monkey, it's experience. So gray-headed chachalaca, that's a Charlie picture, and then the tropical mockingbird on palm fruit. Was kind of neat. It looks a lot like our mockingbird, that orange eye is kind of weird. Right, next. And palm tanager, and I took some butterfly pictures too, but they're not named. Next. And some of the nice birds. Our email is mott, so every time I get a good picture of a mott, I always have to. Next. This is, I thought, a really neat butterfly with a really geometric underwing, and then the just very different upper wing. I thought that was pretty cool. All right. What is that? And that's not a crimson.
Color.
A crimson, no, it's not crimson color. This was in Panama City. Anyway, it's one of the tanagers, and I was debating about its name, but anyway. More butterflies. Just pointed out that a lot of the butterflies are pretty beaten up pretty quickly. They don't live very long. Okay, next.
Well, I can tell you this, I've watched a lot of Elsigana blue butterflies. I've seen lizards jump out and try to bite them. And a lot of times they only get a piece of the wing, same with Palatri's blues. So I'm thinking whenever I see something like that, there's been a small predator.
It looked like there was a bite out of it, didn't it? And this butterfly is one of the crackers, and they're really cool because when they take off from where they've landed, they make a snapping noise. And plants are cool too, so I threw in a few cool plants. There's plants everywhere, which is amazing. Next. So this was our humble vehicle for the duration of our tour. And this is my view from the back seat. And again. So Jacob saw this lure, and Jacob was our guide alongside the road, a pile of trash will bring in anything. So next slide. So we crested caracara and yellow-headed caracara, which is new for me, and black vultures. So I'll just mucking around in the trash at the end of this old closet. Okay. So now we're on the Pan American Highway. A little traffic, Pampas Grass, the problem there also,
Oh,
in fact,
wow.
Guido's organization, Adopta Bosque, does a lot of work with Pampas Grass removal. And they're doing a little bit of, work along the highway as well, and apologizing for your, inconvenience. I've never seen that in the States. So living fences, if you take a stick and stick it in the ground, it'll sprout. This happens all throughout the tropics. That makes a good fence, because it's not gonna fall over. And then it rained nearly every day, I think, a couple of times on some days. And then we finally made it to our little hotel in Santiago. And here's one of Charlie's pictures, lesser yellow-headed vulture. Savannah hawk, this is a handsome hawk, it's so red on the front and then gray on the back.
We did
Yes.
see probably 1,000 of those one evening in migration.
Wow.
Savannahs or Swansons,
I thought it was so bad.
okay, right?
Oh, wow.
It's cool birds. So this is going off to visit the mosquitoes. This is a very swampy area, so we have wattle jacana. And woodpeckers and a lovely little Peruvian's pygmy who tried to hide from us at first. This is Jess going off looking for little things to take pictures of. And this is, the Savannah hawk is behind a fence, and it apparently had somebody who wanted to eat down there, jumping around and jumping on it.
I like those spots on the wings.
It's a handsome bird, right? We didn't go swimming. There's a lot of Charlie's
Well, that,
pictures.
you know, it was a shame because you would have learned how to walk on water.
Yes, me and the Chicanas would have been out of there, right? And I thought this plant was so beautiful, and frequently when I would say something about a plant or something that wasn't a bird, Jacob, our guide, would say, I don't know much about that. And then a few seconds later, next slide, he showed me on his phone what it was. So he had all the information there, and his phone just not in his head. Okay. Common little flycatcher we saw. Into another park in the neighborhood, a little bit drier. And again, it's another Charlie's. And the fork-tailed flycatcher. And my shot where you can see the fork tail a little more clearly is up against the sky there. So we're off to Boquete, which is up in the mountains.
Not bucket.
No, it's not Bucket. They had some very nice over the Pan American Highway and over the other major highways, walkways so that people wouldn't get killed, which I thought was nice. And then when we got to Boquete, we ate a couple times at this buffet lunch place, and it rained. We stayed at Tree Tech Boquete, which is a pretty resort. Rained a lot. In the back is Volcano Baru. Baru volcano, but just neat plants and trees. It really was a pretty place, and we saw a lot of good birds here. Next slide. Next slide. And everything changed all the time. There's this clouds coming and going. And they did have violet saber wings there, which is one of my favorite hummingbirds for the simple reason that it's purple, and I love purple. And then when you would sit down, you could see the intensity of the color. It's amazing. Next. This is the female white-throated mountain gem, who's just about as pretty as her boy, I'll tell you. But she was guarding in front of our cabin. Next. So we had lots of rufous collared sparrows. If you've ever been to Central America, you've seen rufous collared sparrows, or some people call them RCS. And then picked up an acacious rain. Then next. These are prong-billed barbets. They had a little bit of a hook on their bill. Okay. And these are two gorgeous green hummingbirds, green crown brilliant. Like, how can you tell the green on the crown from the green on the rest of the bird? I don't know, but they probably ran out of the other adjectives to use for it. And then the striped-tailed hummingbird. I'm looking at that picture and go, oh, really? So you look at the next slide. You see we have just green and white on the green one, but on the other one, there is some white under there. And next slide. You can see the stripe when they're moving. So sometimes you can't just tell a bird by looking at it, you have to wait for it to move. Right, next. So here's the Panamanian black phoebe and same species, our black phoebe, which has white coming up much higher on the chest. It's very interesting.
But
But-
our black phoebe talks all the time and the
Yeah, this is
Panamanian
very
one
quiet.
was,
Very true, very true. Ours tends to let you know it's there and theirs was much quieter.
Similar behavior, like,
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
catching. Yeah, yeah.
Are there more predators of the phoebe in Panama?
I don't think so.
Is that maybe why they want to be a little quiet?
So Tree Tech Bouquet is known for its zip lining and its rum cellars. And they also sell geisha coffee, which I thought, what, geisha coffee in Panama? Actually, geisha was a local indigenous word that had nothing to do with Japan when they first started growing coffee there. This is the world's most expensive coffee. And we looked at it. I didn't buy any of it, but,
what does geisha mean there?
Hmm?
What does geisha mean? Just a coffee?
I think it was a place name.
Okay.
Do you remember? Do you guys remember? I think it was a place name.
Mhm.
Okay. And it's also a working tea farm. So if you want a really fresh cup of tea, you go out and get your own.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a great picture, Charlie took. Okay. So silver-throated tanagers, well, this common chlorospingus, but it's silly name for a bird. But and this is the male and female flame-colored tanagers. She's almost as pretty as he is, in my opinion. Very pretty.
they were sitting on the edge of a trash can.
No, don't get ahead of the story.
The jury will disregard that.
On the left is one of the heliconias that Jess was talking about. Many of the hummingbirds, especially in Central and South America, have very deeply and long curved bills, so they fit nicely into the space here where the flower head is. So you can kind of pick out which hummingbird's likely to go to which flower by the shape of the flower. And then just another is a really cool old tree there. Okay. And so we went for a walk down the road, and we're going farther down the road. We walked for about 4 hours and thinking, how am I getting back in time for lunch? And fortunately, Guido showed up with the fans. So we were able to do it. Okay. But we saw some cool stuff, a really neat anole lizard and collared trogon. And a really cool little tree. Next,
Oh, wow.
little bitty guy, but brilliant. And we saw 2 or 3 groups of, what do you call a group of Swiss? Something fast. I guess migrating together. It was kind of neat. Again, pretty water, pretty plants. And then we went to have lunch, and then we went to have ice cream, and I had maracuya ice cream, which is passion fruit. And it was so good, and it was so pretty. Okay. So we headed for an area called Bajo Mono. Neat rock formations, all very, very volcanic, and just some really cool things to look at there. Okay. And again, the torrent tyrannulet is very, very little.
Oh, wow.
When you blow him up, he looks more like that. I guess he was bigger, they call it a tyrannula instead of a tyrannulet. Okay. So bug finders have a different focus. This is a young man who's studying entomology, and he came along to help Jess find things. They were cracking open logs and finding scorpions and all kinds of fun things. Okay. And Eric's taking a peek there, and again. And then Guido on the left and Jacob not looking at the bugs, they were interested in the birds. Okay.
Oh,
He almost matched that fruit, that fig or whatever he's eating. So pretty. Yeah. So we stopped at a place called Finca La Rita, which is another resort. Some really pretty mosaic work, and then hammocks out on the front of the cottages. This gentleman was standing up on that ladder with a machete trimming the hedge. And then it got foggy again because we're in Panama in October. Okay. This guy was skulking around in the bushes. And then this is what Eric is referring to. Finca La Rita, the flame-colored tanager, was our trash bird sitting on the trash can. And then when we threw, of course, we couldn't resist throwing a little bit of our sweet cake that we'd gotten. So now we're going to Sendero de los Quetzales. So, oh boy, let's see some quetzals. Yes. Okay, except it rained and we did under the eaves bird watching. And it was not so good. Okay. So here's a striped-tailed hummingbird humming in the rain. And so I sort of took a leap of faith off that branch. I hope he finds a place to land. Next. So it's our last morning tree trick. We had yellow-bellied siskin and silver-throated tanagers. So pretty. And then we're heading out of Boquete. And we stopped at a gas station. Next slide. And there was a tree across the street from the gas station that had a whole bunch of cool birds in it, including this gorgeous hummingbird called a Darwan mango. I don't know why they call them mangoes. I understand it's brilliant and emerald and gem, but mango, I like mangoes too. But anyway, next slide. It's a couple more shots. Same bird. It's got purple on the tail, blue and green. It's like a whole rainbow by himself. Amazing bird. Next. And a long-billed star throat. Of course, he wouldn't show us his throat. And streaked flycatcher. I really like birds that show you both sides. That's really nice to have cooperation like that. Okay. Somebody's head is feeling something like that. Very, very pretty little hummingbird. Okay. Brilliant, brilliant. These tanagers are not related to our tanagers. Our tanagers are actually related to cardinals, but they have both down there to make it easy. Okay, so we went to a wonderful forest reserve up along the Continental Divide. Continental Divide in Panama is really kind of cool because you can stand there, you can see the Pacific over there and the Caribbean over there. It's like it's pretty narrow compared to our Continental Divide. Next. So we have big-billed birds, and next slide. This was, I don't know what. I updated the program after this version. This is called a snowcap. You can see the snowcap. The body of it in the right light is purple. This has been a target bird of mine since we went to Costa Rica in 2009. And so we got to see it. Of course, in the fog, in the rain, at the top of the ridge. So photography was a little bit tricky, but we saw it and it's a beautiful little bird. Tiny, it's only about this big. Your bill's only about this long. They're really cute.
There was no sign to reflect off, but said there was no.
It makes it really tricky. Yeah, it makes it really tricky. Although they can change the angle of their feathers to get some color, but changing the angle plus the sun is really good.
Is that a hummingbird?
It's a hummingbird, but it's a tiny little thing. Okay, they had a lot of these bus stops along the roads, which I think if you stood right in the middle, you might stay dry. So Jess is going around behind to see what might be living behind the bus stop. Okay. And this is a little roadside restaurant that we stopped at a couple of times. And they had a fun little trail and plastic flamingos. Okay. So you can see we're up there in the cloud, we're in the cloud forest, very much in the cloud forest, okay? So as we're driving along the Continental Divide, there's nothing, there's not a building in sight. And all of a sudden there's this hotel all by itself. And we go by it and I'm like, that's the craziest thing I ever, and who did their landscaping? There's not even any landscaping. So we go on for a day and then Guido and Jacob inform us that we can't go to Boca de Toros. And the reason we can't go to Boca de Toros is because of the national strike. There's a national strike on in protest of a copper mine. Actually, a copper mine has been working for 20 years, but after 20 years of thinking about it, the Supreme Court, not too long before we got down there, said that it was unconstitutional. So the president pulled the Congress together and they passed a new law that made it constitutional. And everybody went, oh, good. And they went, oh, wait, whatever. And so they all went on strike and blocked roads. And the issue with getting to Bocas was Jacob and Guido know the back roads, they could get us down there. But the airport was on an island. And the island was blockaded. And they couldn't figure out how to get us back to Panama City if they got us to Bocas. Otherwise, we'd have to turn around and drive 2 days back to get to Panama City. So they said we can't go to Bocas this time. So we turned around, and went back to this hotel, and I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna be embarrassed about this, but it was a lovely room.
Wow.
It, next slide. And when it cleared up, there was a view of the Pacific Ocean. And there were some birds out there. We didn't spend much time birding them. So we're going along the road. See the snake. He's a big long snake, and he keeps going up this way, and then he turns black. Jacob, what kind of a snake is that? Next slide. Tiger snake. Well, then it's phone again. So that's a pretty, it wasn't as huge as it looks like on the screen, but it's a pretty decent sized snake.
Constrictor.
Yeah, constrictor. So there are a lot of birds whose names start with ant in the tropics, and many of them were named that because when the columns of army ants go through the forest, either they're eating the ants, a few of them eat the ants, but most of them eat the stuff that gets sort of churned up by the passage of all these ants going through. So the ant vireos, the ant wrens, everybody else, one or another of their relatives was named for that behavior, and then they all got to keep the name. So this is a little cutie called the spot crowned ant vireo. Next. And we went over this dam several times. Next slide. And I tell you, it rained at least once a day, every day. But they said we're having a drought, and there's two issues with the drought. One issue is this powers a hydroelectric dam. The normal water level is here. And the water level is here, even though it was raining all the time. I don't know what it's like on a good rainy year, but it was very low. The other issue is the Panamanian Canal is filled with fresh water that they catch when it rains. And they don't have a place to store water, and they don't have enough water to run the canal, so they're now running at less than half capacity, which is a major source of income for the country. So it's a big problem, but nobody ever thought it wouldn't rain. And I can understand it because it rains all the time. All right, next slide. Couple more of the gorgeous little birds flitting through. Yeah. Squirrel cuckoo's a little bigger. Yeah, a cool flower. And we saw hot migration. Oh, wow, this is almost like Bogus Mountain, not really, but at least we saw birds in flight migrating, so that was good.
You
Next.
know what kind of hawks they were? Or?
I'm not real good at hawk silhouettes. I think these look a lot of them like that. We saw lots of Swainson's hawks. We saw lots of black vultures. We saw lots of broad-winged hawks. Broad-winged hawks are shorter wings and shorter and wider wings. But Jacob was rattling them off, and I'm going, okay, fine, I'll take the picture. Bill Mental, Amber, both those like good names, got a nice big boat there, okay? Now, I sometimes have an issue. That's not tawny, that should be pumpkin cat territory. Right, next. We heard this a lot. See my green dot? You see the short-billed pigeon? See my green dot? We heard it in Africa too. Now I have a green dot down, so I can do it myself. What's funny in Africa though is because L and R are interchangeable in many of the languages in Africa. It was something said they would try to say, see my laser, and it would come out, see my razor. So the dot works a lot better. Okay. So there was almost nobody on the road except for a few big trucks, and the strikers would often let trucks carrying critical supplies like food through. So we'd hear this horrendous noise and this big truck would come around the corner, and then there'd be nobody for hours. Okay. So we could stand out in the road and bird with, because we could hear the trucks coming from a long ways away. Just amazing birds, they're so pretty. Okay. This is the crimson nape. These are both pictures of the same bird. There's a little different light on it. And we stopped at another little place for lunch where they had a nursery and a restaurant. Okay. And up in the rafters was a golden-headed gecko, which is in one of Jess's pictures as well. A little better lighting. Just amazing. It is. And we'd be standing there and everybody be looking at a different bird sometimes. So this is where Jess's picture was taken with all the butterflies and stuff was on this flower head. Okay. Isn't that a pretty little hummingbird? Our two are cute, but and then again more peliconias and then orchids growing alongside the road. Okay. So then we're gonna head back down to David to fly back ultimately to Panama, but first. Okay, this is about the protests and the swift deal making was the president and the Congress saying, okay, we made a new law. And so they took that law to court and everybody thought it took 20 years for the first decision. How long is it gonna take now? We can't wait that long. So it was interesting because it was the environmentalists, the indigenous people and the labor unions. And people were just sick and tired because everybody knew the country got a lot of money from the mining, but so did a lot of the politicians, and they're all just sick of all that. So everybody who was sick of it was protesting. So they're blocking a lot of the streets. And next slide. We kind of skirted a couple of protests before this one, but this one held us up for a couple of hours. And it was fun to see the women in their indigenous dresses. And then there's Guido in the middle of it. Now, Guido has been an environmentalist, like probably since the Supreme Court started deciding on the mine. So this has been his battle as well. So he got out there and he was singing and he was jumping and he was on the mic and he came back over and said, did it feel kind of good to yell at the government? And he said, yeah, it just kind of feel good. And then somebody else got in the act, starts beating on his coffee mug. Yeah, he's a radical. I sent that picture to his sisters. This is a cute little slide that was in a playground near the airport in David where we birded one morning. Next. Okay. This is really cool. Lance tailed mannequin. Yes. And he got just so the light would highlight it there. Red on his head. Teeny little fat guys. They're real cute. And then we went on a boat ride to visit the mangrove swamps. Big woodpecker. And mangoes. This is not bare-faced, it's bare-throated, sorry. I kept looking at that, I think I have to go back and fix that. Okay. Next. Heartbreaking, you know what I'm saying? And then these gentlemen, they're coming by really fast in their boat, and then we realize what? They have fish, and the frigate birds want the fish, and they're after the fish. Okay? And so I was throwing pieces over in the water, hoping they'll go away, but they're still following. Okay? And then, next, you see when I looked at the picture, I went, oh, there's a white ibis here. I never saw the white ibis in person. Tremendous flyers, long wingspans, very lightweight birds. And they'll steal from anybody, including people. Okay. Charlie got this picture of a king vulture that was over my head. Okay. We didn't see too many kingfishers, but the green kingfishers are pretty reliable. Okay. So then we got on the airplane in David, and it was raining. And this is along the Pacific coast. There's a new area there that's been preserved with mangroves and so forth. We flew over. Okay. And that was what we were flying in. It worked. It got us there. Next. Oh, that's a good one.
Was the snowstorm?
Oh, no, I have a feeling. Oh, shoot. I did two. No, I did. This one stalled and I set up a new one and I think I downloaded the wrong one.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, the happy news at the end of the story was Supreme Court made a decision in only a little over a month's time. And they said that it was illegal. And the president said, okay, we're going to shut down the mine. And the mine is shut down. How long that'll happen, I don't know, but it was quite a day of celebration.
Can we get that Supreme Court for us?
I don't know if it takes them 20 years to make the decision the first time. And the second time, apparently they changed. One of the interesting things about Guido is in his spare time, with all the work that he's doing with conservation and with his organization, Adopta Bosque, he decided to go to law school because he thought that would help him in his battles. And he said that the change that the courts made, the change that the Congress made in the deal with the company was like rewording a few things that had no meaning at all. And so it really shouldn't have taken them even a month, but I think they probably But okay, let's get our finances in order and have our way out of town before we make this decision. But it was quite dramatic. And then we had, Eric and I got, after, Kathy and Jess, we did one more day of birding after we got back to Panama City. And then, Kathy and Charlie and Jess went home, and I had asked for a couple of extra days of vacation time, so I thought, let's spend them in Panama rather than LA, so we did, and got 2 days of birding on the Pipeline Road and, Gamboa, just with Jacob, just the two of us and Jacob. So that was really special. And we saw another bird that I had never expected to see, which is called a rosy thrush tanager. And they were a deep rosy red, and he was deep in a thicket, and I did get a couple pictures of him, which unfortunately didn't make it onto my thumb drive today. But I was just stunned when I saw it. I'd seen it in a book. I thought, there's no way I'm gonna see that bird. And they're only just right in front of us.
Well, it sounds like getting that log agreement, could have to be a benefit.
I think it's gonna be, he just finished it just a couple of months before we got down there. But I think, in this day and age with the type of stuff that he's trying to do with nature and conservation and stuff, it makes really good sense with it. But he's just so busy all the time. He's really, I hope he gets to spend a little time with him. Most time he's just too busy to be doing anything. So that's the end of the presentation, because that's the end of the. Oh, here we have our checklist of the birds that we saw. And our bird book and a couple of, these are kind of fun, these probably are not gonna impress Jeff at all.
Oh, yeah.
It's good for and one of I actually got a blue morpho with its wings open. I got lots of pictures of it with the wings closed, but I also got, with umpteen efforts, got one picture of a blue morpho. What they would do is you say, there's a blue morpho, and you go, where's my camera? And you go, oh, it went, it's gone, and they just disappear. But I did get a few seconds of floating out there.
Is the field guide for birds in Panama that you recommend?
Jacob. Jacob's a guy, Jacob. Guido's very, very good too. When we, the first time we were down there, I was talking with a couple of them who were also bird guides, and they said to me, Guido is the best guide in Gamboa. He doesn't have time to do it, but he's very, very good. But Jacob's really good. Jacob is the kind of guy, we ran into the lead birder from Canopy Tower, and he said, he thinks he's a pretty good birder.
I'll go with the first question and sure to repeat it. So I saw a ton of pictures of hummingbirds and tanagers, highly diverse groups. Are those the dominant birds, or did it depend on where you were?
The question was, we got a lot of pictures of hummingbirds and tanagers. Were they the dominant birds? It depends a little bit on where you are. It also depends on what catches your eye. And hummingbirds and tanagers, being as bright as they are, tend to catch your eye. They're not always cooperative, but they do catch your eye. But there were a lot of little brown things down in the forest as well. They're just hard to see unless Jacob knows them personally and calls them up with his music. Any other questions?
There might be online.
Are there any questions on Zoom? Okay, yeah.
Nothing coming up in the chat at the moment.
Do people know anything about it? Elizabeth's on. Go, Lisa.
Nothing coming up in the chat at the moment.
See a lot of familiar faces there. So anyway, if you ever have a little money that you want to donate to an absolutely fabulous organization, Adopta Bosque is really incredible. And it's one of those situations where I donate to a lot of like well-known organizations. But this is the one where knowing Guido, seeing the work that he does, and he does a lot of really cool things like the women, or the people who do the bird watching, the hawk counting. Oh, I should back up. The day that we should have been watching hawks, they saw 1 million hawks that day. It was the most ever. They'd gotten 200,000 like the day we got there, 400,000 a couple days later, and we would have had 1 million birds if we didn't. So I am going back. Maybe not this October, because we're looking at other plants, but the October after, I'm gonna go see all those birds.
You wanna, can you mention our chapters?
Yes, PV South Bay Audubon is a supporter of Adopta Bosque, and you can actually donate to Adopta through the Audubon chapter, and you can then get your deductions on your taxes. Otherwise, if you just send them money, you're just sending them money, which is fine for them, but you don't get the tax deduction. But in Bocas, the hawk counters are indigenous women. Good. Which is wonderful, although it doesn't always go over with their indigenous husbands too well, if they're making more money than Papa is. But they have counters in their hands, and Guido says they flip so fast, you just have no idea how they're doing it.
Are they just passing through Panama or?
Basically, if you look at, if you see a chart, the question was, they just passing through Panama, and basically, yes, they're on their way to South America in October. And what happens is, because of the design of the North and South America, is it kind of narrows down into the into Central America. And then, so there's a big hawk watching place along the coast of Gulf of Mexico, in Mexico. And then they channel down and go through Panama. And it hadn't really been acknowledged until a few years back, and started noticing it, but this might be a thing, and so now they're trying to promote it. But the other thing that was interesting for us, because we missed the big hawk watch, was that the weather was bad in the mountains, so normally the birds would go on the Caribbean side of the mountains and down, but because the weather was bad over there, they were coming down on the Panama City side, and so we saw more of them on the road down to Panama City than we would have otherwise.
Are they coming from Mexico or from?
Alaska, all over the US, channeling down. Swains and Hawks especially are famous for spending the alternate seasons down in Argentina. So forth, so
Did you hear of it being called
Oh,
a
here we
choke
go.
point? Did you hear it being called a choke point, where you come in and eventually you just have to go out over the.
We saw many
Spread out.
utility towers, especially early in the morning, that were full of vultures that roosted for the night on the utility towers.
Program is
Starting.
And I'm sorry, could you hand your microphone to, thank you, I appreciate
So I
it.
just hold this.
Yes, or, put it on your
put it on your
jacket.
shirt.
Well,
Just don't take it with you.
Anne should have, right?
Okay.
It's a new form of tuxedo.
Yeah.
Well, it says Audubon on it, doesn't
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Yeah,
very
there you are. There you go.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
formal.
yeah.
And this one says Panama on it.
Okay, so picking up where we left off, as far as the pictures are concerned, for the last Panama trip, our group headed back to Panama City, and Kathy and Charlie and Jess went back home, and because they had 2 more days, they didn't have to be at work, we decided to add on 2 more days of birding in Gamboa and the Pipeline Road, which is a fabulous birding area, with our guide Jacob. So a little bit of, I never really figured out what was up there, but I think there were more cars up there. So here's the vultures on the, they're in migration, and they needed a place to stop, so that a convenient place to hang out over there. There's a really big fish. Black-chested jays, that is. In the tropics, things will grow anywhere. This is along the Panama Canal, this big metal structure up in the air, and there's a bush growing out of the top of it. Amazing. My goodness. So we spent some time at Sorania Park. This is a muddy, immature, yellow-headed parakeet. Some familiar birds and some not so familiar birds. Some really big ships. These are coatimundis.
What are that?
They're kind of raccoon relatives. Is that it's called just Pilates? That's the tail. I liked in the previous picture, we found them by the tails in the air. Oh, look, there's something at the other end of the tail. And that was at the other end of the tail. And ginger type plant. A big iguana. The trogon had a really big caterpillar it was eating. The only sloth of the whole trip. This is a blue morpho. And that's it with its wings spread. I took a lot of pictures to get that one.
You're walking along the trail and this
Yeah.
thing just kind of glides along.
That's how you find them.
Really ethereal.
And you go, oh, look, where's my camera? And that's gone.
I remember they were in the coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to,
Yeah, we had to go to a butterfly place.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jacob with his scope and Eric with his bench. The fruit crow is not a crow. It's actually in the Katinga family. But, and they're red throated, not purple throated, but, other than that, it's a pretty easy bird. to get. This is a dead butterfly we saw in that neat pattern. And a goody mama and a goody baby.
This is the neatest insect I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's kind of like a dragonfly. And you see on the right, it's perched and it just hangs its wings down beside its body, just holds on with its thing. I have a few seconds of showing. Come on, there you go.
Wow.
But all you can see are the spots. And it's called a helicopter. They're called helicopters.
What is it called
Because they look like helicopters when they're flying.
Yeah.
It's really, there's. Eric and I could have stood there for hours watching it, except that Jacob said we had to go look at more birds. So we said, okay, Jacob, if you insist, we'll go see a red cat mannequin and a velvety mannequin. And the cinnamon woodpeckers. Funny vines and trees. These people are weed whacking to get the grass down, and they're dressed head to toe, hats and gloves, and it's 110 degrees out, and just look miserable. Halloween, we're in for Halloween, so there's Donald Trump Halloween.
Can't get away from
That little golden colored, I just sat there and looked at it, it's so cute. This is a leaf frog. Right?
That one, okay. Oh, it looks exactly like a leaf.
Exactly, isn't it beautiful?
I don't know. It looks exactly like the leaf color.
Exactly, perfectly.
Camouflaged. Camouflaged.
This was a bird I never expected to see. They're pretty, as you can see, they act like to hide out in the dense brush. And Jacob said that the bird had been there for a couple of years. That's why he took us there, because he knew it was there. But he said, I haven't seen them mate in about 6 months, but the bird was still singing for her, I guess. But it was really dark and all the rosy flesh tinted. It was just gorgeous. A little fungus. Jacob with this is his vehicle as opposed to the van we drove in. There are no pretty sunsets in Panama this trip, but a lot of rain and fog. And then the happy ending was the Supreme Court turning over the decision on the copper mine, and everybody appreciated celebrating it. End of Panama.
Presentation. Really wonderful. You did such a great job on the one. You really gave us a good sense of the country.
It was really